Welcome to the Ayahuasca Parents Podcast.
Right on. You smile every time.
It's hard not to because she sounds so little.
She's proper.
Yeah. She might be the youngest one, but she's definitely the greatest force in the house for sure.
For sure. She's the smartest.
Hey now.
Don't tell everybody that, but she's probably the smartest.
Oh, she's a dolly. I say that every time. I'm like, she's a dolly. Yep. How was your week this week?
So it was dense. Yeah.
Super busy.
Super busy.
The couple weeks before Christmas, it's like just dead as far as business is concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just had a full moon on 12/12/12.
Which was yesterday.
Yeah. So I'm feeling quite relieved.
Yeah, are you?
Yeah.
That's nice.
I don't know why I feel full moons.
Lots of people do.
Yeah. I must have a higher water
Content.
Yeah.
I just think the more that you're aware of certain things,
Yeah, could be.
I
Could be
think-
just straight up mental placebo. Like,
No.
oh God, there's the full moon.
No, I don't think that. I just think that, 6-7 years ago, it would have just been having a really bad day and I just want to eat everything,
Yeah, but see, now it's like have a bad day, a few days in a row. Then it's like, okay, what's going on? It's not me. Mm-hmm. And then, typically at some point I'll look up and go, oh shit, the moon's almost full.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I used to think it was a weird thing until, you look at statistics from the law enforcement in the hospitals.
Right.
And they'll tell you that people go batshit crazy on a full moon. So
Yeah. The numerology guy that we watch on Twitter, he says that today is going to be a rough day for most people, especially driving. He's like, watch out.
well, it's because he says today's a day one, right?
I don't know. That's one thing. I've researched a little bit about numerology. It's just not something that really has, captured my interest enough to really understand it. Like astrology has. Like I had my natal astrological chart read.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago. That was pretty eye-opening. I like to, sometimes I'm drawn to those things. I sort of ebb and flow with everything. Sometimes I do my own tarot. Sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I'm looking at astrology forecasts. Sometimes I don't care. It just really depends on, really and truly, they're all signs of you're feeling wonky. Go within and find out what's happening.
Yeah.
And we always seek outside of ourselves to find something that gives us some sort of answer.
Yeah.
About what's happening within. When, if you think about it, you would never, lose like your car keys inside of your car and then search outside of your car for your car keys.
Well,
that makes no sense. You'd probably if you could open the door or get a locksmith and search for your car keys inside the car. Kind of the same thing, we're interesting creatures like that where we got something going on inside of ourselves, yet we want to look outside of ourselves for the answers.
Yeah. Well, and like numerology as an example is they do it like depending on which numerologist you use. I think it depends on the situation. Like I think you can look for the numbers. Like some people will take the date, right?
Right.
So today's 12/13/2019 and they might just go, today is a day 8.
Right. 1 + 2 + 1 + 3 + 1 + 2.
Yeah, it's like, how'd you come? Right. Or some other people are like, well, it's 2019, so we got to include that other 2. Or some people will just call it a day 4 because it's a 13th. 1 + 3 is 4. It's like, what are the rules?
Yeah, I will say this about numerology, which still blows my mind, but it was 2007. We just had Jaden, our third baby. And it was like January of 2007, I started to get haunted by this 1111. And I wasn't aware of anything. And anything I Googled, it was talking about angels. Well, I was agnostic. And that wasn't even something I was interested in.
Yeah, it wasn't going to fly, an angel.
Yeah. And so, like, I would go to work and it would be the weirdest things. It would be like, I would look at a microwave. It would be like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The microwave would be blinking 11:11. Or, the water filter or our water softener counter would be, you know, blinking 11:11, and it wouldn't be 11:11. I had the weirdest experiences, and I'd be haunted, and I started taking pictures because I think you thought I was crazy for a minute there. When I would say to you, I'm like, everywhere I go, it's 11:11, like literally everywhere I went. And it would happen for like 3 months, and then it would be dead for like 3 months. And it got to a point where I was taking pictures and compiling like a whole digital database just to show you I wasn't crazy, you know?
It's an interesting thing too. Like it started within the last 10 years. People are reporting that they see, you know, triple digits. Yeah.
Well, and so that was another weird thing that happened after coming back. And if you want to act, or if you want to sound like a psycho, a legitimate crazy person, start telling people how you start seeing triple digits.
Yeah.
And so I started seeing these triple digits. And, you know, I know the world is, you know, mathematical in nature. So, you know, maybe just because of my understanding of things, I was like, well, it's not that bizarre, but I didn't have a clue what they meant. And so I sort of went looking for an explanation, and I wasn't really into kind of like the new age, like this means that your guardian angels are around you. I kind of really resonated more with like the esoteric, you know, mystery school stuff. And I came across this guy named Drunvalo Melchizedek. Just so you know, I don't believe anything that he says or preaches or whatnot. I don't believe any guru, but there are little nuggets of truths that I do pull from people. And he had a breakdown of the triple digits that I really resonated with. And so the way that I saw it was, well, I think that the universe is attempting to communicate with me through these triple digits because it was ridiculous. It got to a ridiculous.
Oh, I can witness this.
And so I realized that I was seeing triple digits in a digital way. I was seeing triple digits, you know, like on license plates. And I kind of looked at everything and thought, well, the most ridiculous, like, or statistically the most difficult way to see triple digits would be on license plates.
Wow.
The first three or the last three digits. And so I set an intention with the universe. If you're legitimately trying to communicate with me through triple digits, it has to be on license plates. It has to be either the first three digits or the last three digits.
Not a combination in the middle.
Not, well, unless it's like a letter and then like some of the, you know, vanity plates here for a specific, you know, university here, they'll have letter, three digits and a letter. And so I'll take that as well. But most of the time it's three digits before, or, you know, the beginning or the end, not anything in between. So it can't say like A65 space 55P. Like, that doesn't work for me.
They have to be in sequence.
It has to be like 333. See, again, now I sound crazy, but this is my reality. It literally, this is what happens. And Joel's been in the car with me before where I've seen 444 on 4 or 5 cars in a 60-minute period of time.
No, you'll stop and you'll go, well, that's interesting. There's, you know, whatever numbers, 333. And you're like, well, I'm not going to pay attention to it unless I see at least one more car, 333. Now we're on one 10-minute drive. Like if we're going for a walk by the river, for example, it takes 10 minutes to get there, and you'll see it within the first 2 minutes, and then we'll see it again by the time we get to the parking lot. And statistically, that's retarded. That shouldn't happen. And that's not even a single case. It happens. When it happens all the time. There's breaks. Right.
Well, and depending on the sequence, because of what they mean for me.
Yeah.
You know, so if I see
anybody else seeing numbers, you're going to resonate with this big time. You're going to like, oh, okay. Maybe you can take some advice from this and go just set an intention.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the thing is like, there's magical parts of life that we just don't pay attention to. Yeah. And we've been told repeatedly that it's just coincidence or this or that, but
it's synchronistic. But you know, when you dive into how atoms work, right? And the double slit theory and things like that, it and just mathematics
makes sense.
Just mathematics. And when you really start thinking about what we are, you know, when you really start thinking about, you know, frequency, energy, vibration, really, what does that mean? How does that physically plug and play? You know, what does that mean for my being? And, you for me that it just, it opened up more about what we are, who we are, so it's been fun, sometimes, my numbers used to, kind of haunt me all the time, specifically in the beginning when I was such a seeker, when I was just seeking, trying to absorb as much information. It was almost like I was trying to get to the end or something. Now I realize that there is no end. We're infinite.
What's that saying? The spiritual path is designed to exhaust the seeker.
Yep, it's true. In fact, I had a friend that told me something beautiful. He goes, if you just want to think about it as like a faucet, like a hose spigot, and you can have it drip or you control the flow. So if you want to, absorb a bunch of information and you want that flow to be faster, then you can release the hounds and, or if you don't, you can, just let it do a slow drip. It really depends on what's going on in your life. And that was really important for me because I think I was absorbing so much information and never taking any of the time to integrate it.
Yeah.
And really make sure that I'm kind of weaving it into my frequency, weaving it into my reality, making sure that like I'm really, as far as like my neuroconnective pathways, like kind of redoing some of those neuroconnective pathways, so that whatever the old behaviors or the old way of thinking was, I would replace it with, whatever it was that I was, learning. And, I was quite exhausted after years of absorbing information, but it was also really great for me because I got to a point where I was like, I felt like I had really looked at everything, maybe just on a superficial level. There wasn't a lot of things I went down a lot of big rabbit holes on, but I had a really good gist. And I remember thinking, well, this is it. Like, and that was really good for me because I'm like, it's like things aren't as they seem again. And they weren't. And you can always push past and just ask for more clarification or more truth.
Yeah.
What I've learned is you have to be flexible. And you have to be flexible in, any of the beliefs. The minute that you think you know something is the minute you're caught in a belief. I think we've said this before. And, and that's...
Don't get caught in a belief. Keep your opinions permeable, be able to ebb and flow with the information and listen to your gut. Like literally listen to your gut, listen to your emotions.
Because your beliefs should evolve as you shift perspective and expand your awareness. In fact, I reserve the right to do that. So anything I said in my first podcast, I have the right to not think that anymore. Like as I evolve, I think that's one of the reasons why most relationships break down, like they do. Because people hold other people accountable for their core beliefs. Like, when I met you, you had these core beliefs. It was like, I evolved. Like, I think I've said this before too. I hope that in the next 7 years, Joel, that your core beliefs have shifted.
Well, they should.
They better.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what I've been doing for 7 years.
Yeah, we better be growing.
I think the whole reason I'm constantly looking at information is to try to understand whatever better.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Is that what we're naming it now? The whatever better.
The universe. This incarnation. I don't know. But like, my beliefs and my points of view shift. It's like today, like I'm watching, I like that guy on YouTube, Bright Ideas, because he's kind of a researcher. He's like a vet who decided he wanted to make YouTube videos about ancient history, right?
Yeah. Okay. Now I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and he's become very, he's got a super huge following, and so I've watched all his videos, and so he had a new one come out today where he's talking about all the ancient structures that are built underneath the ocean. And the one that really stuck out was the one that's off the coast of India that's 14 miles off today's coast. Right. And it's,
that's interesting.
Is there some significance to 14 miles?
Well, when do they date it back to?
They don't know how to date it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're trying to, in their little brain wisdom. They're trying to figure out how long ago the ocean was essentially 250 feet lower, you know, but they don't know. They don't. They're just guessing. The interesting thing is there's all these pyramid looking things down there that look like the ancient Inca stuff. And anyway, my whole point of bringing that up is, you know, it's the more I watch these videos, like, get out of here. We are literally a blip in time. You know, they try to paint our history as 2,000 years tops, just complete horseshit. And, you know, there's just too much, there's too much proof, but there's proof. We don't even know what proof we're looking at, you know? And again, this thing off India, 14.5 miles off the coast, 250 feet below the current sea level.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
What is that?
What do they call that?
They don't know.
Oh, so it hasn't been named?
Oh, the site? I don't remember what they called the site, but the guy, he's like, they're guessing it's from such and such time period, but they don't know.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, right? Is that we have all these modern humans that want to interpret the data based on whatever we want it to be.
Well, I think our humans that have, you know, titles with alphabet letters behind them, I think that they feel like I don't know is not an answer. So even if it's a bullshit hypothesis, we got to put it out there.
Yeah, which is crazy because there's some power in saying, you know, good question. I don't know the answer, but let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can find out. And I just think really scientific community, you think you're so awesome. You think you're so knowledgeable that you can't say that. You can't say, you know, good questions. I don't know. Yeah. It's going to take me some time to research it. It's going to take me some time to think about this.
Well, you know, I've been talking about, I mean, sometimes our little podcasts go off on these tangents, but we're here. So we, you know, you and I have been talking about how science has really become more of a religion, right? Where you just dig your feet in. You're like, nope, this is all the answers and there's no more to be found.
Set beliefs.
Yeah.
Everything that's discovered has to fit within in what they believe. We've
already figured that out. And so everything going forward has to sit within these parameters.
And I have all the alphabets after my name.
Yeah.
To prove that I have the right to tell you that.
I can prove that I memorized what he said.
Yeah, I tell you what.
Which is the truth.
Let me tell you what alphabets I like after people's name. Amateur.
Yeah.
If I hear you're an amateur, you know, whatever, physicist. Right. I mean, not to say that there aren't some physicists that have the alphabets, but also consider themselves an amateur physicist. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm like, those are the people I listen to because those people have followed their curiosities and they're not bound by some sort of educational institutions, you know, religious doctrine.
The people with the most interesting hypothesis, a lot of it's followed up with some fact that you know, you can make your own mind up. They'll present the evidence and you can decide what you will, but you know, they're not the ones that work for the governments. You know, like you take like Randall Carlson.
Carlisle
or Carlson. Carlisle.
You're probably right. I get.
Yeah. Well, so you take him, you know, and he's the one that's been trying to figure out what happened to the U.S. and, you know, because at one point we were a mile. Essentially we were a ice cap. The North America was an ice cap. That was a mile deep. But it wasn't always an ice cap because they can date the ice cap and they can date the melting, at least these, I guess, fringe people or these non-alphabet people. And yet then we're still finding things, you know, like the pottery doll that they found 200 feet underground in Idaho that dates back 60 million years or some shit.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, so it's like, okay, there was a civilization before there was an ice age that left us with a mile thick ice cap on North America. So.
Right. And there's evidence to show this.
Yeah.
Yet mainstream science is like, whoa. You can't see something like that without alphabets.
Yeah.
After your name. Like, how dare you? You have no PhD after your name.
I would challenge everybody, like, just follow what you're curious about and try to find the people that they don't even tout themselves as experts. It's usually everybody else that touts them as an expert. Like, again, you take like Randall Carlson, or you take like Graham Hancock, or you take like Robert Schoch, or you take these guys that are super into, you know, how the ancient structures and things like that. And, you know, I'd follow what they say because they're actually reporting straight evidence. They're giving you, they're following their statements up with evidence and facts that you can Google yourself.
Yeah, or see yourself. I mean, that's another thing is that if you can't experience it yourself or see it yourself, then why are you even believing it?
I read a quote from somebody on Twitter today. He's like, my grandpa used to tell me, believe nothing that somebody else told you and only believe half of what you've seen with your own two eyes.
Yeah. Well, I got this like weird download, I don't know, a few years ago. And it was like, I turned to you and I'm like, do you realize that everything that you know, somebody told you that told them, that told them, that told them, that told them? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that originating person, did they know they were a multidimensional being? I was like, that's it. I'm like, you can only trust yourself. But we've grown up in a culture of don't trust yourself. Trust other people. Give all your power away. You know, leave that to the thinking people that went to school to think right for you. Like, it's crazy to me the amount of things I've had to undo as far as my conditioning is concerned. And that is like one of my greatest curiosities is what does a human look like that hasn't been conditioned?
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know if I'll ever get there. You know, I feel like I unwind only to find like a whole other, you know, room of unwinding that needs to be done. And, you know, even the idea that you have to be unwound could be conditioned. Like when I really start, that's when I get into well, maybe I should just accept, you know, I get into this accepting mode, but then my curiosity sort of generate more, you know, questions.
I mean, when you take, you know, we talked about this a few episodes ago, when you take a psychedelic and it kind of frees your mind up from this weird programming, right? This kind of
drink your milk to get your calcium.
You're right.
Like
yeah.
That kind of programming.
This kind of sleepy programming where, you know, we're
where we've allowed commercials to tell us how to live our life.
Commercials, the news, the government, TV shows.
Crazy.
You know, and it's not like it just unprograms you. It's like it lets you see how ridiculous it is.
It becomes humorous at some point after you get done. After you get through the anger, you know, like I was raised, you know, in a religion. Right. I made choices, big choices. Like I made a choice to get married. I made a choice to have two children fairly young. All because of this religion that I was conditioned into believing was true. Yeah. And when I realized it was a sham, when it was bullshit, man, I was so angry. And then you start to break down everything else. And it's just like, you get really angry. Like, God, like I made real choices. Like I brought people into this world based on what I thought was right, you know? Well. And then anyways, and then at some point you just can't help but laugh, you know?
When you look back at, you know, you take the food subject, for example, and you look back just 20 years, like that's not even half my lifetime. I'm in my 40s. So you look back just 20 years and you look back at what they told you we were supposed to eat and told you we were supposed to drink, you know, and they told you, and now 20 years later, it's all a sham. Like everyone knows you're not supposed to drink milk from a cow.
Boy, they better.
Most people do. Most people do. Most people tell you it hurts their stomach. I'm not saying that people still don't drink it. There's plenty of people that still drink it. I mean, overall, you know, statistically, worldwide, milk consumption for humans from an animal is going down. Yeah. Big time. You know, they're starting to see all the health problems that come from it. You know, so again, that's just like an example of, as I was a kid growing up, drink your milk for strong bones. Strong teeth.
Me too. Not your mom, not your milk. And you know what's funny about that is the disconnect. You want to talk about the disconnect. If I were to say to you, well, why are you drinking cow's milk? Why don't you drink human milk? Immediately your stomach rolls. Like that is disgusting. So hold on. So you're willing to drink the milk from another species, you know, another animal, but not from your own. Yeah. Like it makes no sense.
I saw a video on Facebook where some mom who owns a farm is letting her like 2-3-year-old drink straight from the udder from a cow. Okay. And that got reposted in a vegan group. Oh no. And they're just like fucking coming at this person like nobody's business. And I thought, I mean, if you're drinking milk, there shouldn't be anything wrong drinking it from the udder. Oh, it's disgusting. Well, why is it disgusting? Because you're not supposed to drink it. Well, it doesn't look right.
Well, probably not very safe anyways. The baby could get stomped on. Like there's,
Well,
okay. Not to mention the udder could be
physical
disgusting.
Physical safety
have poop on
things aside, they say if you're going to drink any milk,
right,
it should be raw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard this. There's been a lot of farmers that have offered the raw milk and they get shut down.
Yeah.
Supposedly there's some sort of, I don't know, medicinal quality to it.
That's what I've heard too. I know nothing about it because I don't drink milk.
Yeah. It's just one of those things I sort of read and went, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah. Well, so we talked earlier about maybe talking about other plant medicines.
Oh, I see. You're trying to get us on track now.
No, I mean, we can totally I'll talk numerology, ancient builder stuff.
This is why
I'll talk about the Smithsonian crushing giant bones if you want.
No. This is why I love having conversations with you. We've been together for 15 years. We spend an enormous amount of time together. Like we work together.
Yeah.
And yet we still talk all the time. There's never a lack of conversation between the two of us.
Well, there's lots going on.
Yeah. Well, we really could riff if we wanted to for another hour and a half.
Oh, I could talk all things that they call conspiracy that are not.
Right.
I could talk about that forever.
Yeah, absolutely. But I see that you want to start talking about what we plan to talk about.
Oh, I mean, we don't have to. But.
Yep. So what did we plan to talk about?
Well, we were going to talk about other plants.
Oh, yes.
But you know what? I kind of think it kind of fits in what we're talking about, because there's a magical quality to each plant. Every plant has kind of something it does. Mm-hmm. Kind of has a way it interacts with you, So let's start with Huachuma or San Pedro. Right.
So when the sanctuary that we went to, Spirit Quest, they did 8 days of ayahuasca and 8 days for ayahuasca. And then they did an additional 8 days if you wanted to stay for Huachuma is what they called it, which is basically the street name is San Pedro, which is a cactus.
Yeah.
So it's similar to peyote, or they're both cactuses, cacti.
One's from North America, one's from South America.
Right. And I wasn't really told much about Huachuma. It was after what Don Howard said about ayahuasca. The worst thing you did was that you Googled anything or researched anything about ayahuasca. I really didn't want to research anything about Huachuma, and so I did not.
Same here.
Yep. And so I went down to Peru a second time and did ayahuasca again, and then I decided to stay and do Huachuma.
Yeah.
And it's 8 days, but it's 3 cups. And they, and it was absolutely nothing that I had really ever experienced before.
Yeah.
And so the way it's delivered is, so you take it about noon or 1.
Maybe back up real quick.
Yeah. You tell me what you want to talk about then.
Well, because you're definitely more informed. So Huachuma is a tradition from the high Andes, right? Where these people go on these pilgrimages.
Right.
Do I get this right?
Well, and they sort of traced it back, I believe, to the Chaven de Huantar culture. Yeah. And anyways, and there was a bunch of people from all over the world that congregated here. It had a civilization of about 3,000 people. I think a little bit more than that. They never had a military or an army. The structure's still there. Some things that are unique to this place is clearly there's some ceremonial buildings. There's some tunnels in which are fabricated or designed to divert the water from the rivers to flow into the structure that create a sound.
Oh.
Yeah. If you know anything about trance states.
Have they measured its frequency?
I have no idea. I haven't read anything about that. But the medicine that they used in the Chaven de Huantar culture was San Pedro, was Huachuma. And with Huachuma comes a couple of other plants. They have, the Huachuma, they have the cactus. Then they have something called sanguro, which is basically made out of tobacco. It's a snuff to prepare the nasal passages to partake of a plant-based DMT extract from a tree called Vilka.
Yeah.
And so it was Huachuma, and then you have the Sangaro, and then you have the Vilka. And you do everything on different days. And of course you have like a day in between each of the ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
You have, and this is knowledge that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And so for our shaman, it was important that Huachuma ceremony mimicked to the best of his ability what was happening in the Chaven de Huantar culture.
Yeah, and I think he did, I think comparing ceremonies, seems like he just kind of ebbs and flows with whoever his audience is.
Well, I tell you what, the description of Huachuma that he gave us the day after people left from ayahuasca,
yeah.
I mean, I was looking around and somehow I was the only girl. There was like 15 of us that stayed for Huachuma, and I was the only woman that stayed.
Yeah.
And the way that they try and set up the ceremony is they have, they have this altar that is ridiculously incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a whole bunch of different artifacts and totems on it.
Going back thousands of years.
Right. It has, a huge tapestry that kind of signifies the 7 degrees of consciousness, an axis mundi. And it's set up sort of like a battery. So positive, negative, not negative meaning, nasty,
Mm-hmm.
more like a battery. But you have one side that is the feminine side and one side that is the masculine side. So I was holding down the divine feminine myself. And then there were a couple of gentlemen that helped hold it down with me.
Nice.
It was very kind of them.
Nice.
But it was the introduction to Huachuma was a lot about the culture behind the ceremony.
Yeah, it gives you kind of a history lesson before you.
Yeah, it was awesome, and you really figure out really quick that we're going to do energy work.
Yeah.
So I really feel like ayahuasca, it's a heart medicine, but it works a lot with the vibration, the physical things.
Mm-hmm.
And with Huachuma, I would say it works a little bit more in the energy of things. Both work in frequency, clearly.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with any spiritual injuries. Not that ayahuasca doesn't, but there's some specific things that Huachuma dealt with and deals with that for sure ayahuasca does not actually deal with. And that was surprising to me. And honestly, I was really angry. Again, because I was such an angry person anyways, I think there's lots of anger that comes up for me in my plant medicine experiences. And it was after, so you have these masadas that you do. So you wake up, I can't remember, do you eat breakfast or not? I can't remember if you did or not on the day of.
I think you eat breakfast, but I think that's it.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to quickly eat breakfast in the morning, like before 10, because then you take the medicine at 1 p.m.
You show up, and each time you take the medicine is associated with an element.
Right.
And so you show up a few hours before, and you kind of get a background on the element, right?
Yeah. So first is water, then is earth, then is air.
And while you're doing that, you're eating fruit and limonade, and at least that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
So then you do the ceremony, which,
everybody comes up one by one, and they basically drink. Again, it looks a lot like the ayahuasca cup. It's about 8 ounces of the Huachuma.
This happens during the day. This is like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
And it takes about 30 minutes for it to kick in.
Yeah, and this is I would say it's not psychoactive the way some people might think it would be. Like,
I think it
visionary.
completely depends, because we had a dude that was really sensitive.
Really?
It was like he was seeing all the fractals, he said the whole jungle turned into jaguars, and
Really?
he hallucinated up until the next morning.
Really?
Yeah, and it wasn't until
Wow.
someone had said to him, this was the second time I went, someone had said to him, "Oh, I don't think that's normal. You should go talk to Howard about it." That he went and talked to Howard, and Howard's like, "Whoa, you are really sensitive." Like,
Yeah, I wasn't aware that anybody could vision or kind of trip on it.
yeah, he absolutely was having a psychoactive, like a whole experience.
Well, okay, so let's take turns. You want to have a take turn session?
Sure.
So your first ceremony, go.
Well, so it was the water masada, and you know, we drank it. It's not nearly as bad as ayahuasca, and they give
Right.
you a limonade chaser, which is basically just lemon or lime water.
Yeah.
It's very important to drink the limonade the way in which that we were taking Huachuma, so that your electrolytes, you know, so you get a lot of electrolytes, so that you don't get a headache. People that chose not to drink the lime water would get a crazy pounding headache, or just drink water. You can't just drink water. You have to be drinking the electrolytes.
Yeah.
There's some random information for you. It's the mom side of me that wants to mother everybody. Remember to drink your limonade, which I think I did to all the boys. It was like, no, you got to drink your limonade.
Well, I went a second time without you, and I passed the same message on. My wife says.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting how many people have an aversion to lime water. And so then we bothered the kitchen for sugar and just made it really sugary, and then they drink it. And that seemed
Really?
Yeah, that seemed to be okay. Or fruit, you know, like the fruit juice they'd have in the morning.
I enjoyed limonade so much, I drank it when I got home.
Yeah, we drink it almost every day. It's good for the kidneys, lymphatic support. Anyway, so, you know, you sort of just sit there and everybody comes up and drinks. And then you get to go for a boat ride. You go for a boat ride. You get to go be at other tribes. That was one of the coolest things about, you know, what we did. We went to a tribe first. And I remember right away it was raining. And I remember right away that you could see the water droplets. I mean,
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. And just like, it was almost like it was almost like I was looking through some sort of, you know, 5K slow-mo camera.
Yeah. Oh, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could literally see each of the droplets.
Yeah, that
you
was
know?
one of the most amazing boat rides I'd ever been on.
Yeah. And you feel like you're part of the water.
Yeah.
I wish I had a picture of the two boats and all the people literally leaning outside of the boat to look at the water droplets. Because we were just like
I was like
staring
putting
at
my hand in there and like, oh. I even took a video that means nothing to me, not on Huachuma, but at the time I thought it was amazing.
Yeah. We went through a walk, and I remember just with the walk, I remember, I don't know, just I was thinking about my grandpa's, which was different. I was thinking, we got to this one place in the path where they had deforested it for a big, huge oil pipeline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was just like this crazy like scar in the Amazon, and I remember standing there and weeping.
Yeah.
Just thinking like, look what humans have done, you know, look what we do. We just like scrape and scar,
Yeah.
you know, whatever we want to for whatever reason that we feel like we need, you know. And there was a lot of dogs. It's something people don't know about like Peru is that there's a lot of like, you know, a lot of animals that are suffering, specifically dogs, you know, that are feral and running around looking like a bag of bones and and I've seen dogs laying there almost dead, not quite dead. It's very traumatic, you know, coming from Western civilization where we've domesticated, you know, these animals and to see them suffering like they are. And, you know, so, you know, things like that. I experienced crazy synesthesia. And that was kind of fun.
So what's that, in case people don't know?
Well, so basically I was smelling colors and seeing texture. So it's like someone got into your brain and rewired, you know, your senses.
Yeah.
So, you know, I could taste shapes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just bizarre. It's one of the weirdest things, but it was so much fun. And I remember about halfway through being concerned that I was having a good time. You know, like, am I allowed to have a good time? I remember Howard just like rolling his eyeballs at me again, like, ugh, Cammy.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you think you can have a good time? It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. You know? And then you come back, you know, we went back, you get back on the boats about the time the sun's setting. And that's super beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're kind of dirty from your walk or whatever. And so we get back to the sanctuary, which, by the way, on Huachuma feels like a swinging, what do you call it? A treehouse. Did you ever feel that way? Like you got off the boats and all of a sudden it felt like the whole sanctuary was swinging and you're like, oh my gosh, we're in the trees.
I don't remember.
Yeah. For me, it felt like the sanctuary was actually flying. Like like we were up in the air. It was so bizarre. Like, what is that? Swiss Family Robinson? Remember that show?
Yeah. And Sanctuary looks kind of like it.
I know. And so it felt like that to me anyways. Everybody rushes to the showers to take a shower and put on your ceremonial clothes. And then you meet back into the Maloka where the big altar is. And the altar is intense. It is unlike it's a mesa. It's unlike anything that I had ever interacted with. And because of, you know, my kind of Christian upbringing, you know, you're wrestling with some beliefs. Like, is this evil? You know, is this benevolent? What is it?
Well, I told you when I was there, we had some Irish Catholic kid that he was there for once. He's like, hell no, I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's intense. I mean, it really makes you kind of bump into it.
You can feel the fucking energy. It's like static is coming off this thing.
It really is. You can feel quite woozy. It's very powerful, like real power. It's not like it is a battery.
Yeah.
There's some crystals. There are skulls of shamans. There are skulls of jaguars. There's a bunch of different types of totems. Every, you know, curandero will have a different type of mesa. And Don Howard's mesa was legit. So we sit back down and then we basically one by one come up and interface with the, or at least that's what we did the first time. So we interfaced with it. You put your left hand on the one side, on the negative side, and the right side is on the positive side, and you kind of breathe into it, just sort of getting a feel for it. At some point when everybody was done doing that, we all stepped around the mesa and kind of moved our way around the mesa just to really get a feel for the energy.
We did the same thing.
Yeah. And so, and that was it. The ceremony ends about midnight and we get to the dining Maloka and we eat. I've never seen more people eat more food in my life than
Same. Yeah.
I was there. There was a part of me that was just like, what are you guys doing?
We ate all the food before Howard even got there.
Yeah.
He showed up and he was like,
Yeah.
And he did his little, and then some like little dude came and he's like, talk Spanish. And then the little dude came back with more food.
Yeah. It was kind of, it's interesting. It was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we did, same thing, you know, met before, go in, you know, take turns drinking it. I mean, the interesting thing for me when had same boat ride, same feeling, you know, really, really connected to the water. Thought it was amazing. You know, I don't remember what tribe we visited, but we visited a tribe, kind of walked, you know, they like to perform for you. I think hoping you'll buy some of their crafts that they make. We played around with the kids from the village. Then Howard was basically like, yeah, go hang out, do what you do. And that's when I decided to go for a walk that no one could find me.
That's right. Joel went MIA with someone else, right? Like,
well, I got about halfway through the walk. I turned around and this girl, Carly, and Carly didn't come for ayahuasca. She was already in South America for something else. And so she decided to do Huachuma only. So I didn't know her.
She's like, this dad guy is headed on a walk. I'm going to go follow
I'm old enough
him.
to be her dad. She's like 22 and I'm like, 40 something. And so I turn around and she's like, where are you going? I'm like, I don't know. She goes, cool. Can I come? I'm like, yeah, we're just following a path. Right. And next thing you know is we came upon, I think, the village all these people stayed in.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting thing to find because it's basically a bunch of wooden shacks, but none of them had a front door.
Well, they're all open face.
Yeah, no, but
like
none of them had
dollhouse.
a front. Exactly, like a Barbie dollhouse. And we're walking through, and I'm like on one hand, it was the most amazing thing because you had all these kids playing,
Right.
like just having a good time. They're playing volleyball and soccer, and and you're looking in the shacks, and basically everyone's like, "Who the hell are these two white kids in the middle of Peru?" They're kind of staring at us, but we had a moment where it was like, it just felt like, it's interesting to see how other people live when you come from suburbs, basically.
Yeah, it's super eye-opening and humbling.
Yeah, and I mean, it was straight a village because it was basically like this giant flat courtyard, and where they made their own volleyball courts and their own, soccer fields and things like that. And then the houses are built in a circle around it. And then there's basically a sidewalk, and then they arrive by boat, these little boats, and you would never know that there was anything back here unless you knew where to park your boat. They eventually, somebody came and found us, was like, "Hey, they've been looking for you guys for like an hour." I'm like, "Really?" By the time we got back to the boat, it was dark. And Howard's like, "Yeah, man." I'm like, "Sorry, dude." He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how to get back to the sanctuary in the dark." And keep in mind, when you're coming to this place, like, you're taking these tiny ass, like, little water paths, right?
Well, they know how. They have spotlights. It's just that what happens is
confusing,
the people that live there, the indigenous people that live there, don't have lights.
Yeah.
And so we're in speedboats. And
good point.
The boatmen are so talented. Like, you have no idea how talented these boatmen are, because based on the waves that they start to see, they shut off their engine and they put up a spotlight.
Yeah, so they don't run anybody over.
Right. And they know that it almost makes me emotional thinking about this. I miss this place.
Yeah.
And they shine their spotlights, and the indigenous people that live there, they'll be in these canoes, these paddle canoes, but they hug the sides, knowing that the big speedboats are going to come down the middle. Mm-hmm. But you can capsize one of these little tiny boats, based on the waves that we're making in our boat. So it was super important for them to find these, to shut off their engines and to show, shine the spotlight on these guys. Anyways, that was the bigger issue. It wasn't necessarily did they know where they were going and how to navigate us back to the sanctuary.
Not running.
It was making sure that everybody gets back there safe and that we don't end up accidentally capsizing someone else's
Which is,
boat. But how fun for you to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those. I mean, the funny thing is, her and I had some really deep conversations about childhood, and because she's just graduating from college, and so she's trying to figure out what she wants to be in life. Had nothing to do with going to college. It was more like her. If I remember right, it was her parents' kind of expectation, and she just felt like that was the right thing to do. Had no idea what to, and I know from kind of following her for a little bit, she just started volunteering, started spending time in South America, blah blah blah. But it was one of those interesting times where we had some really deep conversations. Didn't have any after that. Because we were both just kind of one of those things. I mean, it was kind of one of those, we went to dinner and I addressed everyone apologizing. And then I was like, really, it's sorry, not sorry. That was a really cool diversion. It's too bad you guys didn't come with us. Because it was good. I mean, it was good. It was like watching, I don't know how to explain it. It's not like the innocence of people, but kind of. Yeah. It's a different place out there. So, definitely. It definitely fit, but
I know sometimes I contemplate, should I feel grateful, or should I feel, like about my own, the way in which I live my life. Like, you can't help but think, oh gosh, I just am so grateful for the modern conveniences that I have. Yeah. And sometimes you pity, right? And then after being there for so long, you're like, man, they have it good. Like, they get it. I mean, it's kind of goes back and forth depending on what you see, because there's other things that we see, like about sanitation and things where you're like, this is crap.
Sanitation, and there's other weird things that I don't quite understand. They've been westernized enough to where they want to make money and then buy things when you look at their environment and you look at, like, this land is theirs. Anybody that's indigenous to South America, the government gives you land, as the way it should be. And so this land is theirs. This is their village. They got a village fisherman, because I saw him come back with fish. I mean, I don't know if he's giving fish to the whole village or how that works, but, they could definitely grow anything.
Yeah, whatever they wanted to.
And they, it's typically, how it appeared to me is like these people grow a lot of bananas. So then they go to the market and they either buy or they either sell or trade bananas for other things. So it's still a lot of trade, but there are some people that are, kind of got that Western bug of money. And I think it used to be better. I think money's messed that place up just like it's messed, everything up.
Well, the other thing that was interesting is that you would see these, dirt floor huts that are open face, and hanging on their wall was an 80-inch, TV.
Yeah. And everybody has a cell phone.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I don't know. I just kind of banked it as, well, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
The other thing is that there's chickens everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. I don't think they eat a lot of the chickens. I think they just eat the eggs. They eat a lot of eggs. They must eat a lot of eggs.
Well, I think the chickens help with bugs. Probably.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, they have it was an awesome experience.
Yeah, it really was.
It's like you don't know how present you can be until you're at least on the water masada.
Right.
And you have your first cup of Huachuma. It's like you're so present, nothing else exists.
Well, and time.
I never in a million years would have walked down a fucking path in the middle of the jungle by myself.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
What was like?
Without having, like, you didn't, I mean, there was no way for you to contact
I didn't
Howard.
have shoes.
You didn't, that's right, you did it barefoot.
I didn't have shoes.
How grounding.
Well, yeah. I remember at one point, I'm like, should we have shoes? She's like, well, nobody else wears them.
Yeah, good point.
I was walking through mud, and she's like, you think we're going to get malaria? And I'm like, well, they don't seem to get malaria.
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally, like, everything they scare you about, I didn't pay attention to when I was actually on Huachuma.
Very small percentage of people, I think, that would, probably come back with, or have malaria, or, get some sort of,
I think your body has
West
to be
Nile or.
Yeah, I think your body has to be in bad shape.
Yeah, the time, it just ceases. It just stops.
I mean, that was like a month. Mm-hmm. That one day was a month.
Yeah, it was like ayahuasca really slowed it down. So 8 days felt like a couple of months. And then it was like each day of Huachuma was another month. And towards the end, that last day, after the last cup of Huachuma, I mean, it was like the day that never ended.
Well, and then, you go back, you do, I mean, did they call it a closing ceremony? I don't even know what it was. What
you mean, working with the mesa?
After. Yeah, after you get back.
I don't know. I think it was just part of the whole experience.
So you go back to the mesa, and then you go have dinner. And I can tell you that probably 80% of us stayed, ate dinner, and then we just hung out in the dining Maloka for like a couple hours.
Oh, really? Us old people, we went to sleep.
We were playing games. But we all felt very connected, after that.
Yep. So the next day you wake up and you basically integrate all day. It's interesting because it's more emotional. It's more feelings.
It's all emotional.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of thinking that's going on.
I mean, there were some people that didn't come out of their room.
Yeah. And so, yeah, well, and this is something else that I noticed is on Huachuma, people's behavior, specifically the men, their behaviors shifted big time. So we had some people in both groups that were more introverted. Mm-hmm. And on Huachuma, we're very extroverted.
Yeah.
We had some people that wanted to roll around in the dirt, and so we sort of adopted in both of the groups, although not everybody listened, which was, let's not take pictures of each other. Let's everybody be sort of however we want to be.
Yeah.
Let's not judge anybody for what they're doing, what they're saying, because let's keep in mind we are on a plant medicine, on an entheogen. We're all learning what we need to learn. Yeah. And it was very, very fascinating. At least I thought it was very fascinating to see, we had one guy and he was very introverted, very proper. Okay. I would definitely have called him proper. Mm-hmm. And one of the dinners decided to not eat dinner with his utensils and just eat it with his face.
Nice.
And he was like, guys, you got to do it. So liberating, But the thing is that like I look back at those things and you know, they're yes, humorous, but also they're just more connecting, you know. It's just I find that wonderful and part of the experience to, again, you ditch your conditioning, you know, don't use fucking utensils, just use your face, you know.
Didn't you think the next day was equally as long?
Yeah, or if not longer. Oh, we had one guy that had an aversion to clothing, so that was fun. That was the second time that we were there, and at first I was really pissed off about it because he was getting naked in front of the indigenous kids. And then I realized that probably the indigenous kids see more of that than you know, than we do. You know, Western civilized nature.
I think it would have been a huge problem. Howard would have been like,
Well, yeah, that time Howard. That's when we were up at the magical forest. But anyway. Anyways, it's one of those things where you're just so in the moment and people are really connecting to their human animal. Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it, is that you're really connecting, you're really understanding that you're an animal. Yeah. On Earth. You know, and how disconnected we are to everything.
So it's such an interesting experience because your eyes are open, you're walking around, you're in a foreign place. You know, I took a picture of that one guy. Can't remember his name. He was sitting on a curb. I took a picture of him because he was all by himself. And I took a picture of him right outside the village. So I had the village in the background. And then I walked up to him. I'm like, "You all right, man?" You know? He stood up, gave me a hug. He's like, "It's the first time in my life that I have nowhere I have to be." Yeah. And he's just bawling. And I was like, that is so cool. I'm like, I took a picture of you, man. I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah, true rest.
Yeah, which he really appreciated, you know. Yeah. It's just, the Huachuma, at least for me, it's like it pauses the real world and gives you a chance to observe.
There's no thinking going on. It's like, oh, come here, ego. It lulls it to bed, to sleep.
I'm going to put you over there.
Yeah. And then you become an observer, but then it's like you're just feeling everything.
Oh, man, it's just so cool.
Yeah. And so second ceremony comes, same thing, you know, everybody drinks. And then at least for our second time, let me think about this. This was the Earth Masada. We headed to the village that you went to the first time. For your water Masada, we headed to that one for our Earth Masada.
Really? Mm-hmm. We went to the magical forest for our Earth Masada.
Yeah, and one of the things we went to the magical forest for our air Masada. Yeah. The first time, yeah. But one of the things that Howard had said was, your job is to move the energy. Don't let it get jammed up. Right. And I felt like that day 2 Earth Masada was definitely stronger than day 1 for me. And fuck. And immediately I felt the density. Like I literally felt the density of the earth. And I was I was struggling. Within 20 minutes, I was really struggling and was really fidgety. Like I needed to move, you know. And so we get to this, tribe, and we kind of walk down this path that is lined with trees until we get to their kind of ceremonial center where they do a dance. They perform a dance for us. Yeah. And they have crafts and things that we can pay for. And I was having a hard time breathing. It was almost like every time I closed my eyes, it felt a lot like a mushroom trip, you know, where you could feel that vibration, that vibration. And it was almost like I was being brought to climax, but with no relief. It was just really difficult. Like all this energy was like bunching up. Well, they start their dance, and at one point they have us come and start dancing with them. And I remember getting halfway through this dance, and then I couldn't do it anymore. And I remember just standing there. Everybody's having a great time, and I'm not having a good time. And I remember Howard at that point, they had this woman, Joycey was her name. I love her. But he like kind of motioned over to her and was like, "Hey, come here." He said something to her, and she began just following me around. Well, I just had the hardest time. I couldn't focus. I couldn't really even cry. I felt like a pressure cooker. Mm-hmm. And I guess hours went by. And next thing I know, and I was really thirsty, I needed limonade, and then I needed water. I was getting really, really agitated. And at this point, it was time to head back to the boats. And a couple of things I remember, one, I couldn't wear shoes. Like I just really couldn't wear shoes. So I'm trudging through like sticks and straw and mud and everything and in my bare feet. And I started off on the path first and was blown away when I got there and everybody was in the boats. Like I didn't remember anyone passing me. I remember hearing a wah, 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 wah that was really agitating me. And I remember someone was smoking a mapacho and I thought I was going to hurl, like I was just going to puke. And I get back to the boats and my boat's already full and I didn't want to be around any of the boys, which that was difficult because everybody was a boy except for Joycey. And so I sit in the front of the boat and no one else, like it was just me and then the other boys and the boatman. And next thing I know, Howard's looking at me and I'm like, I couldn't even have Howard look at me. Like it was like uncomfortable. I kept on shifting the boat so that he would stop looking at me and he kept on shifting to continue to look at me and finally sent Joycey down to sit next to me. And there was something coming up in me and I was having such a hard time surrendering to it. And in my childhood, I've had an enormous amount of sexual trauma and in my adult life too. And I didn't know that this was something that Huachuma did, which was to heal, sexual trauma.
Yeah.
And so Joycey sat next to me and I remember she grabbed my hand and said, "This okay? Is this okay?" And I said, "Yes." And it was almost like Huachuma slid in next to me on the other side and flashed all of these pictures inside of my head, things that I had forgotten, trauma that I had had from the time I was a baby to the time that I was an adult. And he said, "We're going to do this and we're going to do this now." And it was like someone pulled a cork from my axis, the axis that I spun on, and pulled a cork and released an enormous amount of energy. And I remember thinking that I just sobbed. I just sobbed and I sobbed and I wailed, and we're in boats and everybody's got their music on. So nobody could hear me wail. I mean, I wailed, I screamed, I cried the whole time. Joycey's holding my hand and basically shaking her head like, yes, like you're doing it okay, And I remember thinking, I'm really glad I'm in the jungle because the jungle was taking it. Like I could feel it drawing it like out of me and taking this dark.
Don Howard was such a badass.
Yeah, he was
like
dark.
He fucking
dark
read
goo.
you, sized you up.
Yep, I knew exactly.
Knew you needed some female.
Yep.
Knew that what you didn't need was a male dude.
Nope.
Sent Joycey back.
Yep.
And yeah, that's awesome.
I spent 20, 30 minutes, crying and releasing. And we get back to the sanctuary and I was so disoriented. To a point where I went back to my room. You're still under the influence of the medicine. So like, just to put it in perspective, like if you sit on a chair and you're like looking at your bathroom, all of a sudden it looked like your bathroom was way, way down the hall. And then you'll blink your eyes and all of a sudden the bathroom's like right in front of your face. Yeah. So like, you're still under the medicine. I was pissed. And I know I should have felt relieved and happy, but I was so angry. I'm like, it was all making sense. Like ayahuasca never addressed any of the sexual trauma that I'd had. And I didn't understand why ayahuasca hadn't addressed it. And it was probably not good timing, but also that, for whatever reason, the sexual trauma really resonated within my energy. Yeah. And that it required a different medicine, which was, Huachuma. Yeah. I go back to the Maloka, and I know I was the last one there. Probably looked like I'd been run over by a few Mack trucks. I felt like that. I didn't want to be around that mesa after having the kind of energy that had built up and then was released inside of me. It was so much. It took so much energy. And that night we were supposed to snort or sniff the sanguro. Right. And And I didn't want to. Like, I really, really didn't want to. And I was really fidgety. I was angry.
But it gives you clarity.
Yeah. And I just didn't, there was no part of me that was going to participate in that. I'd made up my mind I wasn't going to do it. I kept on getting out of the Maloka and going to use the bathroom and then come back. And slowly but surely they were getting to, the last guy. And I remember going to the bathroom one more time, and I remember just clear as day going, did you really come all this way not to do all the medicines? Like, really? Like, you think you're a warrior? Like, come on,
God damn it.
Fuck it. Get back in there. So I get back in there, Don Howard pretends like, is there anyone else? Like, he's looking around the room. Like, really?
He's just trying not to call you out.
Yeah. He's like, anybody else that wants to do this? I stood up and he's like, oh, Cammie. I'm like, this is a true story. That's a true story.
No, I can see him.
Yeah. And he gets this big grin on his face. And, there was another guy there that was a little bit difficult to take in. And he was like, yes, like everyone's going to do it now,
Yeah.
And, I snorted it. I can't say that I saw any clarity, like I didn't vision or, anything like that, but I did complete it. Then I went back to my room, and I was one of those people the next day that just spent the entire day in my room. And I actually did whip out my phone to try and Google. My phone wasn't working well. My phone was on the fritz. It was like I had an enormous amount of energy. I wish I had one of those voltmeters to test my volts at that point, because I bet it was ridiculous.
People don't think this shit's true when it comes to the amount of energy you have. And
yeah, I don't care what
yeah, I mean, like,
people,
there's something
like
there.
that.
There's something to experience. And
yeah, I just,
once you see it, you see it.
Yeah,
So
this is my experience. And anyways, I was trying to Google, does Huachuma heal sexual trauma? And turns out there's been people that have reported that.
Yeah. Well, you can ask Don Howard. He'll tell you it's true. Yeah,
I just, and so I hid. Then I was questioning everything. I think this is satanic. I remember thinking that. I remember, like, what have I just done? What am I playing around with? Like your mind, when you're not under the influence of the medicine, wants to go to all these negative places to try and understand what's just happened. And the truth is that the mind wasn't going to ever be able to tell me what I had just experienced, that it was only my emotions that were going to be able to help me to integrate. I had to integrate this in my emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it did feel traumatic. I've never ever had, I've only had one other ayahuasca experience where it felt traumatic.
Yeah.
And that experience, it felt traumatic. In hindsight, it was not traumatic. There's nothing that happened that was traumatic. It just took me off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my second cup
of
I
had an advantage on my second cup of Huachuma.
Yeah? What's that?
You went first.
Oh.
So I knew that the Earth Masada was going to do something with the energy inside of me with sexual trauma. In fact, there was one breakfast where I was with a group of people like Dara and Parker and John and I said, they're like, does anybody know anything about Huachuma? And at this point, I'd passed around that amazing, video that Martin did about his Huachuma experience, so everybody's like hyped and excited. And so the conversation came up, and every time a conversation would come up, I was in it because I'd been there once before and you'd been there twice before. And so I, talked quite a bit about some things that you said. So I just told people, I said, yeah, well, Huachuma is supposed to heals your sexual energy. And I said, and so if you've had a sexual trauma, it's going to help release that energy. And I said, and I have had one. And so I'm nervous, so it was kind of a way for me to talk about it. So, for us, this is where shit got, when we did our water masada, nothing really happened. When we did our earth masada, it was, I'll never forget, he starts talking about a snake, and right then a snake fell out of the trees, right on the friggin' deck. We're talking like a 6 foot something. And he's like, I took a picture of it, and actually emailed it to Howard. He asked me to because he's like, that's a snake that I don't see here. That's usually way out in the thing. Anyway, so he, you know, his interpretation of the snake and the earth masada is like, oh, we're about to get some shit done. So I'm like, well, this is awesome.
Well, didn't he say it was a good sign?
Yeah, well, like in his,
Yeah.
well, this is a good sign. And it's like, are you being sarcastic or nervous? Because I can't tell. You know, so for us, he said, well, so for the earth masada, we're going to go to this place that some people call the magical forest. And I was like, fucking for real? I got to go do earth masada at the magical forest? Oh, shit. Because I remember you talking about how crazy, beautiful and magical and dense. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, the boat ride there is interesting, right? Because you're going past all these little villages, right? Because it's like a water channel, but the villages are right on the shoreline. We get to where we were at, which is right by another village. It's got like chickens and turkeys and donkeys and shit running around, you know. It's like, okay, this is interesting. So we just start the hike, and it's a little muddy, so we're starting our hike in the mud. The second we got there, I got pulled into. It's like I had this feeling I had to go on a walk. At this point, Howard's like, you know, I always keep one eye on me because of the first one where I got lost. So I stayed by the group, and then the group immediately wanted to go swimming, and I was like, I'm not getting in that fucking water. Like, nope. And I just kept walking, and then there was always somebody like keeping an eye on me. We're going to keep an eye on you. So finally I go back to, I just found a path and walked down and felt like I was alone, and like I could just feel like there's density and then there's density. Like it almost felt like I was being swallowed up by the ground, you know, and I was just like, what do I got to do? I just kept thinking, move the energy.
Which did you find it hard to like move your feet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
yeah,
it was almost like you were in quicksand and you were like, you didn't even have the energy to move your limbs. And then
people wouldn't leave me the fuck alone. You know, somebody would come down like, you doing okay, man? No, I'm not doing okay. Go away. I told this one guy, I'm like, no, I'm not doing okay. Please go away. Like, I'm not going to go any further.
Promise I'm not going to run away.
But I got to be here for some reason by this tree by myself. So there you go. And, you know, I always wonder if I was at the same tree you were. I have no idea. But it released, sort of. Then I became super fucking angry. And they came back and got me and said, you know, they're going to do the tribe is going to do like a dance, and, you know, then we're going to do some sort of cacao ceremony thing where they gave us all these cacao pods. And, you know, they're like, Howard wants you back for that. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to be around anybody. So I basically sat on the excerpts, and I'm just like, you know, Howard's like, you all right? And I'm like, no, I'm not all right. Like, I want to punch something. And he's like, oh, well, stay over here then. You know, he's just like not giving a shit. And, you know, they do their dance, and I'm just not watching. I just couldn't watch it. And then, you know, finally these dudes are walking around giving everybody their own cacao pod, and I'm just trying so hard to like loosen up and not be an asshole, you know. The funny thing was, and really, you know, it's just more, I felt like I was moving energy, more thoughts, more, you know, just anger. It was really dropping anger. Is really what I think. The funny thing was, then we go back on our walk. We're walking back out. I'm towards the back. Howard's, you know, staying behind me. The second we got out of the jungle, it was like clouds parted, feet felt light again, super happy, love in my chest. I turn around and look at Don Howard, and he gives me his famous, you know, and I went, so it works every time? He goes, every time.
Yeah.
That was our conversation.
It's super intense. And
Holy shit. That is the most intense.
There's nothing, because we're such communicative beings. We are constantly trying to articulate and verbalize, you know, things. There's nothing more frustrating than not being able to verbalize. And to some degree, I can't even verbalize what it was that I felt, because it was a feeling.
Well, you know, so I can't verbalize what happened the few times I was by myself. Like, I can't. I know everybody was scared I was going to get eaten by a jaguar or something, so I just constantly had people checking on me, which was pissing me off. But, like, something released for sure. we get back and we're doing Sangaro or Sangaro, whatever, that night. And I was so excited to do it. It was like,
Like clean my palate or clean my
nasal
passages.
He's giving the speech. He goes, now who's ready? I literally jumped out of my seat and ran up to the altar. And he's like, whoa, hang on. Like, we're not. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm first. Let's do this. Well, he's like, well, there's more than you, so we were doing 4 at a time. And, I mean, I've never sniffed anything in my life. I've never done coke. I've never done anything. In fact, I don't like things in my nose.
Yeah, me either.
To be honest with you.
Only Afrin. Do you remember that crap?
No, because I don't put anything in my nose.
You never even did the Afrin, the decongestant?
No, the only time I did nasal spray, is it like a nasal spray?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only time I did nasal spray is, when we lived at that Cedar Hill house. And you bought it, and I'm like, fuck, I'm so congested, I'll try anything,
Yeah,
the Zycam that they recalled.
Oh, yeah, Zycam, yeah.
Anyway, so the fact that it still blew my mind, but, I jumped up and I did it both nostrils, and it was like this giant neon sign in my head that you couldn't see, but it was just this, like, knowingness that, like, yeah, you did it. That was the clarification I guess I needed, that I did it. I released the energy, Right. So I kind of had a different thing going into it because I heard your story and I know my background, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go through something probably similar.
Well, what I realized is that, each of these plants work on a energy, frequency, vibration way, Yeah. And, the way that I see that anyways is that you've got frequency is like a bandwidth.
Yeah.
And as you switch or shift perspective, as you gain awareness, you get more bandwidth.
Yeah.
And inside those bandwidths are these energy particles, almost like ingredients, things that you can choose to observe, and how you choose to observe will then reverberate into your vibration. Your vibration is your actual, like physical, put that in quotes, air quotes, physical self.
Yeah.
And a lot like cymatics. If you look at cymatics, or some people call it kymatics, and you look at the steel plate and the sand, and then the frequency, and you put the frequency through the steel plate, and the sand then makes these shapes. And I see it kind of the same way. And when we do our healing work with these plants, it's not just if you had something traumatic in your vibration, in your physical being. There was trauma that also then reverberated into your energy and your frequency.
Yeah.
So there's this there to really get healing. You have to look at all of it. It has to be released in all 3 parts of yourself.
I agree.
So that's how I felt. I felt as well. And I don't know if it works. I actually haven't really talked to anybody else about Huachuma and the results that they've had. Like we did kind of like a talking circle. I think it was the second time I took Huachuma, but it was more like, poetry and things like that. It wasn't necessarily anybody's results. I really feel like that a lot of the results that happen specifically with Huachuma are all coming from integration. The other thing that I'd heard about Huachuma is that it cured addictions, and I was still drinking alcohol. Now I wasn't binge drinking. I was capable of having like a glass of wine. So I had control, like what most people are probably like,
Yeah.
But for me, alcohol had created so many wounds. It was tied up in some of my secrets.
You only drank alcohol for 2 months longer though when you got
Right.
home.
But I mean, like from the first time I went to ayahuasca, which is in 2014, I went back in July of 2015. I was still drinking alcohol until the end of September of 2015.
Yeah.
But that's really what I wanted to do, was I wanted to work with Huachuma because I really wanted to gain the perspective I needed so that I no longer wanted to drink alcohol, period. Not even for recreational purposes, not for fun. It's a neurotoxin, it's completely acidic. I mean, I knew way too much about really what alcohol was, even in small amounts. What's interesting though, is that alcohol didn't really come up at all for me during my Huachuma experiences. And, I thought it's sort of similar to the psilocybins that I took and how food was never addressed. Yet that was one of the biggest shifts after taking psilocybins was, this focus on what I was putting in my body,
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting when I got home to integrate Huachuma. I know I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but it was interesting that a lot of the emphasis was on alcohol. And it wasn't, the addiction or I should say the clarity, the perspective that I gained on my addiction had nothing to do for 2 months about not drinking alcohol. It was exacerbated.
Well, maybe because the energy that was causing you to drink alcohol was now gone. So now your focus shifted to alcohol.
Yeah, it was interesting. And,
Just a thought.
Yeah, well, and really the perspective was to stop drinking for me was, it was no longer serving my body.
Right. Well, it was different. Like it was.
Yeah, it didn't feel fun anymore.
Way more, and we were way more sensitive.
Right. Yeah. Right. So 3 glasses of wine. I used to be able to drink 2 bottles of wine, some beers, some shots.
Yeah.
The whole bar. I
drank a half a fatty bottle or a regular size bottle.
Yeah.
Now it was good, and then it turned into like 2 cups, and it was like fucking kill me, and then it was like a 2-day hangover.
Yeah. 3 glasses of wine would turn into full on rage or drunk, which would turn into body aches for 3 days.
Yeah.
And but the greatest perspective I had was I didn't need it anymore in any capacity. I didn't need it for entertainment. I didn't need it for coping. And really the perspective that I got was alcohol saved my life, because if I hadn't had a coping mechanism like alcohol, I would have been dead. I would have been dead when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, no, I remember when you shared that with me, and I was like, first I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people...
It's actually a very healthy perspective.
Well, I think so, but I know I'm not the only person, and I can't remember that doctor's name now. Oh, crap. I just found him on Facebook. He's a really older guy. He's a psychologist. He was just talking about this the other day. And I was like, yes.
See the guy from the Spirit Molecule movie?
Yes, that guy. What is his name? Anyways, but I loved what he said, because it was the same thing that I had come to the conclusion, which is it saved my life. And it was at that point I was able to let it go.
Yeah.
But to be clear, when I got home, I was craving alcohol, which I hadn't craved since psilocybins. So for, over a year, I was trying to figure out how we could go out to dinner and drink it, sometimes even during the day. And that's when I was like, whoa, what is happening
What's
here?
going on? Yeah.
So it really became, I became hyper aware of the issue and was able to really kind of dig in deep. But I think a lot of the reason why it was so easy for me to let it go, period, was because of Huachuma and because the energy behind it had been completely healed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was easier to resonate that within my vibration.
I don't miss alcohol
I don't either.
at all.
I miss the hops taste sometimes.
I miss the get-togethers, because that was fun. I mean, you drink most of your adult life, and you acquire friends that drink, and then you're the one that stops.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of reason to ask you out. So I missed that part for a minute. I don't anymore. Those aren't people. I mean, remember that one time we wanted to go try that food out at that bar?
Right.
And we're the sober people there for the food.
Right.
While the rest of them are the drunk people that happen to be eating food.
Right.
And that was, man, you don't want to be around a bunch of intoxicated people when you are stone sober.
Well, it's just uncomfortable. And
there's a dumminess. You get dumbed down.
Well, they look great.
And you don't realize how dumbed down you are on alcohol.
I don't think you realize how dumb you are on alcohol. I mean, like people that are not even drunk, but just tipsy, they continually repeat themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm having so much fun, man. This is so much fun, man. Oh my God, I'm so drunk. Are you so drunk? I'm so drunk.
Yeah.
Like, that is not intellectually stimulating conversation for me, and I don't find that recreationally pleasing or fun or anything. The other thing that it did was, I think it was, full disclosure, in my head for a couple months after we stopped drinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think it was more of a lament, like, oh, I'm not gonna ever, you know, drink wine or drink beer again.
Yeah.
You know, almost like I was kind of a little butt sore over the fact that I was saying goodbye to it, but on the other on the other hand, I was just so grateful that I had a choice.
Yeah.
Because for so many years I had wished that I could have that choice. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then I could actually follow through with the choice for a long,
Yeah.
you know, period of time. But really and truly, not like even now, and we've had some really stressful things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol hasn't even occurred to me.
No.
Yeah. So, and that feels really good. That feels good that like, that's real change right there.
Yeah.
I spent a better part of a decade, you know, really wanting to quit alcohol. In fact, during that decade, I got pregnant twice. I was so grateful to be pregnant because I had a zero tolerance policy for drinking, you know, alcohol. I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
So, and those are some of the best, you know, being pregnant has been some of the best memories of my life.
That's good.
Yeah. Anyways, okay.
That's
So
good.
back to Peru.
Back to Peru. So we did our second ceremony
We already talked about the second ceremony. Yeah.
in Singuro.
Yep.
So after the second ceremony, before the third ceremony, is Vilka.
No. Vilka is
No?
done right after the third ceremony. That's the very last thing we do.
That's what I meant to say. I couldn't.
okay.
I couldn't remember, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do.
You went twice,
I'm like,
so-
I have an advantage. I
Yeah.
went twice. So
But your third ceremony, I think, was better than mine. So I'll just tell you how mine went first.
that's the air masada.
Yeah, it was the Ayahuasca. You know, second ceremony in a row that started with nature making itself known. So we had like some giant ass fucking bird land on top of the Maloka and just like holler like nobody's business. Right when Don Howard said something about birds. It was so weird.
Really?
So
You
synchronistic.
never told me the story.
We're all like, what the hell? Yeah, and he was like, huh, okay, this is going to be a good one.
So you had snakes falling from the sky. Now
Yeah.
you've got birds.
Yeah, and I mean, it was, the experience itself was amazing. It was so we took it, everything's cool, and then the biggest downpour ever. I mean, you know, if you live in the Amazon, it's all the time. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was more water coming down than in the shower.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of sitting around like, oh, shit, what are we going to do? And then we're like, you know what? Fuck it. We went and got on the star deck and we like laid there and just let the rain fall on us.
Oh, wow.
So cool. And then after that, we got changed up and I grabbed it. So we were kind of sitting around and waiting for Don Howard. And he's like, I don't know. There's another storm coming. I don't know. We might just stay on the property today. And he goes, so why doesn't everybody just kind of, you know, hang out, observe, just relax and just feel it. So I grabbed a chair and I went and sat down, you know where that Maloka is, and you can walk on the grass and then walk down. You can actually get all the way down to the river. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I grabbed a chair and I walked down there. And then I was like, I saw the coolest cloud show
Yeah.
ever, you know? And I mean, it's you don't, you know, the interesting part is before I did plant medicines, I knew nature existed and I'd go camping every once in a while, but I wasn't like connected to it the way I am now. Like you
Right.
definitely get connected to nature. So that was the first time I ever really like watched clouds.
Right.
So next thing you know, there was 12 of us. Everyone's out there with a chair and we're all just sitting there and we are just amazed, just staring. Later on, Howard grabbed us and took us for a hike throughout the property, which was cool. So our hike was in the jungle on the property. Mm-hmm. Then our evening, you know, ended up on the star deck. We did some mapacho ceremonies. And that was about it.
We did your Vilka. What was that like the first time?
Well, so this was the one I was having a lot of anxiety about. I mean, I was having anxiety about sniffing tobacco juice, which is Sangura, but this is, you know, powdered DMT that you sniff through a 3,000-year-old finger bone.
that's cut with sodium bicarbonate. So it's basically like sniffing sand.
Yeah. And and Howard was like, keep sniffing it till you can feel it in the back of your throat. You know, and I got a deviated septum on one side, and it's like, he could tell I didn't snuff enough the first time. He's like, why don't you take another hit?
Yeah.
So I'm like, first one I took, you know, it was weak, go to the other nostril, just like sniffed as hard as I could right in the back of my throat. And he goes, why don't you take one more? I'm like, oh shit. Took one more and he goes, okay, now go to your room. I was the first one to take it. Actually, that's not true. Rita was the first one to take it. She was the farthest away. I was the second farthest away. So Rita took it. You know, she's like 65-year-old woman. I'm thinking, okay, my wife took it. Rita took it. I can sniff this like a big boy. She took it like it was nothing. Go straight to her room. I took it. Go straight back to my room. I get back to my room. Put on my, you know, face mask, eye covers or whatever. Put in my ear plugs.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like
Totally fine.
Brain farting all of a sudden. And then the next thing you know, it was like I shot off into the universe. So it was really, you know, so it was that. It was like I was flying through the universe. I mean, it hit me pretty quick. Mm-hmm. There was, I saw some lion people. Mm-hmm. Kind of felt like I was looking at a lion version of you and me. That was interesting. My grandma, who's dead, came to visit me, and it seemed like she was there for a while. I can't really recall any interaction. And then next thing you know, I'm on a ship in a storm, and I'm a Viking. That's awesome. Which is, you know, so it's like, what do I do with all that stuff? I don't know.
Would you actually have Viking?
Yeah, I got Viking ancestors.
Yeah.
The funny thing was that lasted 2 hours, and it felt like 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's the most bizarre thing about Vilka.
I got back to the Maloka, because, you know, when you're done, he's basically like, when you're done, you know, and you feel good, come back to the Maloka, come back to the Maloka. And I'm like, how long was that? And he was like, most of the candles were burnt out. Yeah. And Howard was still there, and he goes, you know, it's been about 2.5 hours. So let's just wait for everybody, and then we'll, you know, finish it off and go get dinner. Excuse me. Vilka is I don't see how it's medicinal anything. I kind of felt like it was, you know, I've never taken real DMT, but they always say it's like a rocket ship ride somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's what it felt like for me, a rocket ship ride. Yeah, you know, maybe it's like you're going to a different dimension, or you're, you know, like I said, maybe I saw a past life. Maybe I'm hanging out with my grandma, you know. I don't really necessarily believe in the term spirit guide, mm-hmm. but it was, when I woke up, it felt like I had a knowingness that my grandma watches over me. Mm-hmm. So, you know,
I think you're right.
I felt good.
Yeah.
She's, you know, I've seen her in dreams and things before, but I think, you know, again, I don't see the medicinal part of what was going on there, but it was kind of a nice ending to the day. So
yeah, it feels like it's more mind expending. I'm with you. I think I need to work on having patience for kind of the pretty pictures, you know. Yeah. The kind of the Lucia Light, like that Lucia Light thing that we did, you know, where, you know, you basically close your eyes and they flash a white light in your eyes, and you see things in swirling patterns and colors and things like that. Without, you know, you're not under the influence of any sort of hallucinogen. It's just light that's being flashed at your face. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like I pretty much had a very similar experience. That third Masada we went to, the what they call the magical forest. We swam in their river, you know. We rubbed this green clay all over our bodies, which is, you know, like you go to a spa and they always talk about, you know, the Amazonian clay, you know. Yeah, we actually grabbed that from the Amazonian riverbanks and like rubbing that on us. It was kind of cool.
So for 2 seconds, were you like, what's in this river?
Well,
because I didn't have that thought till after, and we were all sitting around dinner. I'm like, do you guys even think for 1 second, like, what the fuck was in the river?
Well, we were told at one point not to make so much noise and to splash about like we were. And one of the dudes did have something nibble on him.
Yeah. I mean, we know there were piranhas in there.
Yeah, there was something, but I mean, we were kind of in a shallow part.
Yeah.
So it'd be probably pretty difficult.
I'm just curious. I didn't get in at the magical forest because I was having my own issues.
Right.
But I remember thinking, the fuck are you guys doing?
You know why I got in? Because there were so many mosquitoes. It was so uncomfortable.
Oh.
And I have just the best blood, apparently, and I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'll get in, because they didn't want to be around the water.
Yeah.
And they also performed for us. It was a beautiful hike in. As we were hiking out, it was just like, it was a very great day. And for me, Huachuma felt, the air masada Huachuma felt very high. I felt high, like I would be on weed.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And then we got back to the boats, and that's when, I had, some music playing. I was listening to some contemporary classical music, and it was at twilight. Mm-hmm. So you could still see oh my gosh, I still can't believe what we saw. The billows of clouds, the clouds on top of clouds with the light behind them, and the amount of colors that we saw. But as the sun started to go down, there was this great meeting between the day and the night, where we could see stars, or really I think they were planets, and the moon. And so you had the planets and the moon, and then you had, the billowing of the clouds and like the glistening of the water. It was the most beautiful vision. That honestly, that was the most psychedelic thing that I saw I've ever seen, really.
Yeah.
And it was reality, and how beautiful that was, and just, we got back to the sanctuary, and it was like the very, very best day. I had some nerves about working with Vilka. But to be honest with you, with all the work that I had done, I was down for it. I wasn't really questioning it. I just had some nerves, and I thought, what the hell? Like, this is the last little bit. And I think I was on the first time I did Vilka. I think I was the second person to do it. The last time I went, I was the first person to do it. And
set the tone.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I just walked up there and snorted it like like I'd been snorting my whole life, which I hadn't. And got to my room. The first time I did it, we did it in the ayahuasca ayahuasca maloka. And since that first time, Don Howard had built that second maloka. Yeah. That second maloka is a little bit further away from our bedrooms across that sky bridge. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot longer to go.
Oh, no.
That second time.
Yeah, we did ours in the ayahuasca maloka.
Yeah. Well, it was weird because, not to tell you about the second time instead of the first time, but that second time I went to snort it, and I don't know what happened. It was like a few snorts. Like, it was like my body just snorted on both sides a lot, to a point where I had the black sand coming down, and I started
like Dave Chappelle
and
after
and I started to dry heave a little bit. I was like, Yeah. And Howard looks at me and he goes, "Run."
Yep. Run.
I'll never run. Okay. I'm like the first person. So, my heart's pounding. Everybody else is looking at me like, "Oh my God, Howard said to run." But the first time I got back to my room, I laid down, I did the same thing. I did the eye mask, and, first I went pee, then I laid down, then I did the eye mask, covered myself up, put the earplugs in. And I was in some weird wormhole. I just was like in a slide, but it was like a net that was around me. And I was going down this slide, and then all of a sudden it just opened up to nothing. And I heard kind of like Native American drums just beating, boom, 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 cool beat. And I felt like I was coming up over this horizon. And as I was coming up over this horizon, I heard singing, like the most beautiful choir. Yeah. And it was just singing and singing. It was getting louder and louder, like I was getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And then all of a sudden I realized I had to pee. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? No. I just went pee. And anyway, so it knocked me out of it. And I got up and I used the restroom, and I laid back down to try and get into it, but I couldn't get into it again. And thought, well, gosh, like there's, 10, 15 minutes, Yeah. I was the last person back at the Maloka.
Yeah.
The candles were all burnt out except for like one. I came in, sat down, Howard ended everything, we went to eat. I was so confused. I'm like, hold on just a second. I was gone, I was like out for a couple of hours. Like and the only thing that made sense about that is that I had to pee.
Yeah.
So that.
Well, I totally relate to that because I'm summing my thing up in like a minute.
Yeah.
And it was,
and I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea what the wormhole thingy was. I have no idea what the Native American drums or the choir meant.
Yeah.
The second time I took it, the Vilka, it was a very different experience. I had very interesting looking machines. Like I refer to them as cymatics machines because I don't know what else they are, that would come and hover over my body. That's how and there was a lot of like swirly patterns and colors and things. It was for me, it gets very nauseating.
Yeah.
Like and I can't tell you I had any medicinal side effects other than the fact that maybe what that Vilka does is expand parts in our brains.
Gives you some folds.
Yeah. Or, greater surface area. Or maybe just the ability to expand, a little bit deeper. And had those doors not been open, like I keep on thinking about Matt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Matt's keeps on saying, well, I didn't even know that my brain could do that it had the capability of doing that. I didn't know that I could imagine or even see. Like for him, it doesn't even matter if it was a hallucination. It opened up parts of his brain that otherwise would have always stayed shut. And so
this is a friend of ours that did DMT for the first time a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I think we talked about him in our first
Did
podcast. Yeah. We had a whole section of it. And then,
yeah. But this is a person who never did a medicinal dose of any kind of plant, then decides to do DMT, and he was just like, I can't fucking describe what just happened.
Yeah. And so for me, maybe that is the medicinal, like I get these crazy downloads sometimes where I can think an infinite perspective or as much of an infinite perspective as my cute little human brain can think. And, and maybe that's what it does, is it helps to open up these barriers that otherwise wouldn't have been, opened.
Well, I mean, there's a reason. It's part of the Huachuma ceremony for 3,000 years.
Well, and this is just more for anyone that's been to Spirit Quest, but we actually snorted the Vilka out of a 3,000-year-old human finger bone.
Yeah.
That was used in the Chavan de Huantar's ceremonies.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
Just kind of awesome. And
yeah.
Gave me a little anxiety at first, but then I'm like, well, it's a 3,000-year-old finger bone. It's been part of tradition for 3,000 years. This is cool. I had to, in a way, kind of convince myself this is cool.
You're like, it's okay that I'm holding a finger bone. Yeah, I mean, like, there's so much Western propaganda about those types of things, about the Jungian medicines and how they're delivered in culture and tradition and things like that, And easily people would misinterpret that as satanic or, devil or, bring in these ridiculous, lore-like figures to, try and explain what we went through. I don't really care what people want to judge me for anymore. It really, I'm learning that we're just really mirrors for everyone, and everyone's a mirror for us. So people are going to think what they need to think, but that's for them, not for me. And vice versa. What I think and judge about people is for me, not for them.
Yeah.
What I see is a reflection of myself, not them. Judgments are just benign. Or I should say observations are benign, This is only one place of hundreds to experience ayahuasca and Huachuma. Yeah.
So, it's for us, if it found us and it was perfect.
Yeah, I think the results that I had, I mean, obviously I came home and I was able to really, quit drinking. That was a big one for me.
Yeah.
But I really felt innocent. Again, I felt like that my innocence that I had lost through sexual trauma had been returned to me. I felt very childlike.
Yeah.
And just kind of like, like when growing up, in the Bible, it talks about being baptized and having your sins washed away. That's very much how I felt, like all my sins had been washed away.
Yeah, I think I felt lighter. Let's put it this way. I think ayahuasca and Huachuma go very well together. They kind of offset each other. They're a good team.
Yeah, they say one's the feminine energy, which is ayahuasca. One is a
Yeah.
very masculine energy, which is the Huachuma.
When we both went, I think we both came home going, holy shit. And I don't think I finished. I think there's more to see here or more to do or something, because we both felt like we needed to go back, and the second time obviously included Huachuma, but I think, I think I'm just so happy with that experience. That was one of the best trips. It would have been better if we would have done it together, I think, but that was that was good. It was a nice way to integrate a little bit of ayahuasca too, because ayahuasca is so flippin' intense. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm still having ahas from going, but my brain thinks completely different than it did. I mean, that's the other thing, when you take stock of yourself now, as opposed to 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, my thought processes are different. My logic, the way I work through problems is different.
The way you approach a situation.
Different. Yeah. I mean, I feel very much like I was in a rut before. And as far as, just every day felt like friggin' Groundhog Day, I used to like to say, well, it's time to get up and make the donuts, because that's what it felt like every day, like doing the same thing. But it was more so than a job. It was more like thought processes and likes and dislikes and, being curious about things, or really not being curious about much.
Right.
It was kind of like go to work, come home, make dinner, watch TV, go to bed.
Or holding ourselves to this weird, schedule that we had.
Yeah.
And now we just roll with the punches. Now it's like, hey, we are not going to eat dinner at 6. We're going to eat dinner at 8:30 and we're going to go do something else. Or, we're just much more adventurous even with the kids. Let's go rock hounding. Let's go to, such and such place for a weekend. Or, we're way more, at least for me, I am way more spontaneous than I've ever been before, because I was always list oriented and regimented and the schedule says,
so love that fact about you, that you're not a schedule
crazy person
anymore.
I know. I still do lists.
I don't care about lists. I mean, that's how you most of the time can remember way more than I do because you wrote it down. So I don't have any problems with lists, but I think it's good being just, being flexible and, what, today sucks. Let's go somewhere.
Right.
And just go,
Yeah. Instead of white knuckling it until the weekend.
I mean, the thing is right now is what I'm starting to understand is life is not supposed to be this set schedule.
Right.
And lots of people are coming to the same conclusion. Lots of people are figuring out ways to still got to earn your tokens, still got to make your money.
Still got to pay your taxes.
Still got to pay your taxes. But they're trying to figure out ways to do it to where it frees up their time, that they're not trapped in a job, that they have time to experience other things that they're thinking about or curious about or whatever. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and our experience has been, and this is another great topic that we could definitely talk about in the future, which is that the more we take care of ourselves, the more the universe takes care of us. The more we decide not to be slaves to time, the more time we have. It's the most bizarre. I mean, it's not bizarre because it's, what you focus on, you get more of. Newton's third law of motion, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
But it has been such an interesting thing. We've never worked less and made more money.
Yeah.
We've never been so financially set.
Mm-hmm.
We've never been so emotionally and, personally mastered.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to understand what equanimity is, and that's actually something in self-actualization. And just recently, what I'm working on is I've spent 6 years, undoing how my mind thinks. And
we're
now
trying to figure out how to be an uncontrolled human.
Yeah, an unconditioned human.
Yeah.
And now my focus is on my emotions.
Yeah.
Now my mind, I feel like I get what's going on now in my mind. I've done all this work. Now I'm focusing on, emotions and doing almost not doing the same steps, but trying to be more emotionally mastered and find that emotional equanimity.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I always thought the emotions were, it's a chemical reaction. Emotions are. I didn't really think that you could really control that. So like if you're feeling triggered, right? Like this is a tangent, but let's go with it. Like, for instance, let's say you say something to me and it triggers me, right?
Right.
I have at least enough mastery to know that I'm upset and angry because I've got a belief system in play that's not in line with the truth, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to react, but I am going to think. Like I start to I have these processes to keep me from, becoming reactionary. And now my curiosities are more like, how do I completely observe and not even get triggered by what it is that anybody says? This is a great part about being married. Is that
because your husband triggers you the most.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's true. Or the kids.
Yeah.
So it's a great part about being a part of a family. And
not the dog.
And well, no, he's triggered me a couple times too.
Now, I mean, you go from when you take your first plant medicine, at least for us, you go from monitoring your thoughts. Now you evolve to monitoring your emotions. Why am I feeling that? That seems like an odd way to feel.
Yeah.
And once you start getting to the bottom of those, then like you said, you can control them.
Well,
or understand them.
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to just understand them anymore. That's what I'm not doing a good job of articulating it. Now I don't even want to have those feelings. I want to be so secure,
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with loving myself, And
this whole thing's been about loving yourself.
Yeah, and I'm realizing, there's so much that's come up about, love and self-love. And the other day we were laying in bed and I had this, kind of like aha moment where I'm like, there's just all different types of love. There's like the love that you have for your, significant other, your partner. Mm-hmm. And, and then there's the love that you have for your children. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really even think I knew what love was until I had a child. It's just a very different love. And the love that you have for your partner shifts and changes too after you have a child. There's these openings that are happening in your heart, or, the love that you have for a grandchild. I can't wait to experience that.
Yeah.
And then the love that you have for an animal, for a pet, Yeah. And I was thinking about this and I'm like, isn't it strange that I don't have that feeling for myself? Huh. Here it is. Here I am, the being that's housing the heart. And I don't have that feeling like I have for you or the kids or the dog or my potential grandchild.
Yeah.
And it's like, why not?
Well, I have a feeling you'll figure that out since it sounds like you've kind of set the intention.
Yeah. And so I think that is actually the key, at least for me, that's what I'm thinking, is the way I'm seeing it is that's the key to really have pure emotional mastery, where the biochemical processes in your body aren't even attempting to make you feel certain ways, because you're just so grounded and grounded within, like you're so secure and love yourself like that. So, but we'll see. It's
a process.
We'll see. We'll see.
I don't think there's a finish line. I think it's just.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
It's just.
There's not. Everything's, infinite. That's why, me, I have a pet peeve about, people that get out there and they're like, let me teach you.
I've made it.
I know all the answers. My favorite is, I don't know all the answers. Let's learn together. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why not just say, hey, let's all share? Like, this is one reason why we wanted to do the podcast is we wanted to share.
Well, I want to share, maybe there's something.
Connect.
Connect to people. There's something that I'll say that you're like, oh, wow, I've been thinking about that, or I'm feeling that, or I'm going through that, or something like that. I don't appreciate the CBBME people where they're like, this month we're going to talk about being a twin flame. It's like, shut up.
Right.
Or let's talk about ETs or our archangels
or I've written a book and I've quoted all of the people that I've read about that I like.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, everybody's life is to, it just seems like everybody was born with baggage. Let's figure out what our baggage is. Let's figure out what our traumas is. I don't think anybody, I mean, if you don't have anything happen to you at all, that's a trauma. There's something that you were born to experience, figure out, heal, move forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always go back to the Journey of Souls book. It pings with me where we come down here with a plan, and we come down here in a pod of people that are going to be part of our little play, and we're all going to help each other make it through our plan, learn whatever it is we want to learn, or experience what we want to experience.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we should wrap it up because I think it's been a couple of hours, if not a few hours.
It's at least been 2. So, well, okay. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Thanks for listening. Till next time.
Bye.